Good evening and salutations, my GH friends. So, let's start off with Justine. Start off with Justine. So, Justine has a meeting with Anna. Anna chastises her for, screwing up the warrant and everything like that. And she was like, oh, it was a typo or whatever. I was like, was it really a typo? Because, that seems like a rookie mistake. You seem like you kind of I had a couple years to sit there and do this right. So she's getting upset. Like, okay, well, stop riding me, whatever. I'm only human. I'm like, yeah, but you're seasoned. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would sit there and think Molly. I would expect Molly to sit there and make a mistake not like that, not Justine. So anyway, they talked about it, and she also talked about another warrant that will be ready in like an hour or so, whatever, right? And then Justine goes to her next appointment, which is Diane. The minute that she walks in there, she sees Sunny. And she's like, what the? Long story short, Sunny ambushed her meeting with Diane. And they're talking and everything like that. And, Sunny's like, hey, listen, if you prosecute, if you prosecute my son and you charge him, you're never going to be charged never again in your life. And I was like, what? Now, at first, everyone's there. The initial glass is that you're looking at this like a threat. She's like, you didn't just threaten me, did you? And he's like, no, but you were at the house. You heard the threats that Juris they're making against my son. You're going to be compromised. You have information that you shouldn't be having. And once again, Justine's like, so what are you going to sit there and out me? He's like, no, if I wanted to sit there and screw you over, I would let you sit there and try the case, and then I would force you to recuse it or just come up with the information afterwards. So, in a sense, he is saving her career. And he says he's saving both of them, but now, once again, he comes across as saving her career. And I don't know. When I was at work today, and I was bored as hell, I was not there thinking about villains, right? Like, the villains of the 90s, the 80s, they weren't morally gray. They were unredeemable. One of the villains I've talked about in my member streams and we watched is a guy named Alistair Crane. That man was probably among the most irredeemable human beings ever possible on Passions. So when I'm sitting there looking at a thing like this, where I'm like, where he's sitting there trying to save her career, it's like the town mobster isn't there trying to save the district attorney or assistant, or I think she's actually the district attorney now. Her job, it's a little off, right? Now, before then, Sonny was with Lulu, and, Sonny's like, why are you Smith trying to bury my son in the press? And I'm just looking at this, and like, she's doing her goddamn job. Like, what are you talking about? And, she pretty much sits there and says, like, yo, listen, everything I reported was facts. And long story short, if she didn't report it that way, or if she didn't report it, somebody else was going to do the exact same thing. Go to any other newspaper and read any other thing about Michael, and they're going to be doing the exact same thing. So I'm kind of just like, why are you coming at her as though she's not doing her job, as though she's not part of the family? I don't know. It was a little annoying. It's like, I get it. He's a parent. He's looking out for Michael. But I'm like, you can kind of tone that shit down a little bit. Like, she's generally doing her job. And Ronnie's in the kitchen, and she's making some tea and stuff like that. And Tracy comes in there, and she's like, "Oh, those are my parents' teacups. You can't use them. You're not allowed to use them." It's like, okay, So like we starting off this episode already with her being petty and bitchy. Now, when Ronnie asks, listen, why don't you tell me something about Monica? I didn't, I've been estranged from Monica for years, but you've been close to her and stuff like that. Like, tell me some stuff that I don't know about. And, at this point, Tracy, she snaps at her, and I'm like, Lord. But she's like, I've known Monica, and, we got really close. And she's never talked about you before. And for Monica to sit there and practically not even just leave me from the house, but more importantly, Michael, who was the apple of her eye, to give it to you. This shit ain't kosher. Like something about this is off and is wrong, and I don't like it, and I'm gonna sit there and get to the bottom of it. So she goes to Lulu, and at first she snaps at her, but then she apologizes, and she wanted to know what kind of dirt or anything that Lulu had, which was nothing essentially. She never even got so much as a parking ticket or anything. Um, and this is when she tells Lulu, like, hey, listen, we sparred and stuff like that for many years. But the last, couple of moments of her life, I really looked out for her, I really cared for her. So for her to sit there and do this and just leave it to someone who she hasn't even really mentioned in years does not track. And I'm like, okay, fine. Listen, here's my whole thing. Because I've read the comments. And, somebody was like, I don't understand how y'all expecting her not to be all loud and stuff like that. Don't you know who she is? Yeah, we know who she is. She's fucking annoying. I get the suspicion, right? I get the suspicion. Like, that part I understand. Things is kind of sus. It's not adding up. And she wants to get to the bottom of it. Okay, that's fine. But, like, until you know more what's going on, you're essentially just dealing with somebody who's grieving their sister. And you're being like the worst version of yourself to an already dark day that is upon her. You know what I'm saying? You coming across as out of pocket. You know? I wouldn't so mind so much as the yelling and the bitchiness and the snarkiness on the rest of the family because that's just how she is or whatever. But I feel like this type of behavior is a little like, you can, it's like until you find some proof or whatever, you can kind of tone it down a little bit. Like, also stop sitting there like commenting about her goddamn about the fact that she's a waitress. Like, that is just so, what I'm saying? Like, that's what just makes her come across as so damn uppity and entitled and snobby. It's like, oh, girl, shut up. Um, Drew summons Jordan, and he pretty much tells her, "I'm gonna give you a chance to help Curtis out because at this point, I can send him to prison, sit there and say that he's the one that shot me. He does have the motive. We have the history, or you can use your influence and your connections with the PCPD and really steer the investigation towards Michael." And, at this point, I was like, this seems really like a desperate move. Because Jordan's like, what happened with you? What did you promise Willow? If you frame Michael, then you'll be able to sit there and get her kids back? He didn't say anything, and she was like, I knew it. And I'm kind of just like, that just shows bad writing, but okay. Like the fact that she guessed it on the first try, I mean, verbatim, that's bad. But yeah, she pretty much is like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. It's just not gonna happen. And she's also like, listen, you currently almost died. You would think at this point you would look at life a little bit different, be somewhat of a better person, but nope, you're still the same scumbag. And tells Curtis. Curtis is like, all right, fine, let him do it. You don't have to leverage over me that, or he doesn't have to leverage over me and Portia that he did. So let him try. But he also does sit there and tell her that after everything is done and they find the real shooter, um, they're going to file for divorce. Now, she did bump into Portia. Portia was with Dr. Navarro, and, he did some tests or whatever. And long story short, she was like, yeah, you're pregnant. You've been 7 months pregnant, right? And this is when Jordan kind of bumps into both of them. And, she didn't really sit there and think of anything of it. She's chief of staff. That's a doctor, whatever. So they could just be talking about whatever. Says that Drew's a scumbag, and she's like, yeah, we can agree. And she kind of just keeps it moving. Now, she'll probably sit there and think about that a little bit later on with that interaction. Like, oh, wait. Portia goes to Liz's place, right? There's a conversation with Liz and Willow. It doesn't really go anywhere, so I'm not going to get into that. But Portia comes over there to talk to Liz, to sit there and vent and tell her that she's pregnant. And she's like, there's a possibility that it could be Curtis or it could be somebody else. She does also sit there and say that they are filing for divorce, and what she doesn't want, the nightmare scenario she's thinking about, is either A, they stay together because of the baby and they're not happy, or two, they break up and they have to sit there and have this whole custody thing. Like, there is a C option in there where he finds out and they kind of work out a custody agreement, and that's it. But before she even got to sit there and name the other person who might be the father, the baby dad or whatever, Anna comes over. And Anna's like, I got a search warrant. And they search the house, and Liz panics and calls Rick. Like, you might want to sit there and call Marty too. Anna comes down with the gun. And it's like, where's your roommate at? There's a scene where Isaiah is there thinking about his time in the hay with Portia, and then Lucas comes in, and Lucas is like trying to play matchmaker or whatever. They're talking about the cabin, and honestly, tell you the truth, it doesn't even really go anywhere. Like, this is another one of those filler scenes where it's there to be there. Now, Michael, I was thinking about this on the way back from Dunkin' Donuts. Michael coming in and basically they're telling Ronnie, don't let Tracy push you around. This is your house. Um, Michael was also with Curtis, which was another conversation that didn't really go anywhere. It's like a lot of conversations that have been going on this week that just does not go anywhere. But he does sit there and thank Ronnie. If it wasn't for the fact that if it was your house or whatever, we want to be able to sit there and stall and had them search the house. And this was Ronnie was like, well, if they did search the house, like, what would have been the problem? But part of me is just like, what do you mean you're thanking her for, um, owning the house or whatever? I'm like, because the only thing that she really did was read the search warrant. What are you telling me, that if you would have got the house, or Tracy or anybody else, y'all just would have been like, oh, this looks all in order. I'm not going to sit there and really bother with this. Y'all just do your thing. Y'all wouldn't bother to sit there and read the search warrant? Like, really? This is the only person in that room that had common sense to sit there and read the goddamn search warrant? Is that what you're thanking her for? I don't know. And anyway, he starts talking about his marital problems with Willow, his how much of a scumbag that Drew is, the tearing up the family crib, destroying of his marriage. And he does sit there and doesn't just blame Willow, and he pretty much says that there's blame to go around. And where Ronnie's like, "Hey, listen, I hope things work out." Um, he's like, "Yeah, I know, but I'm gonna do anything to sit there and protect my kids." And this is where, if you're in my stream, people were sitting there saying that Michael planted the gun in Willow's place. Now Willow comes to sit there and see Drew, and tells him about the good news of being able to sit there and see her kids. Drew's like, "It's a trap." And Drew pretty much just kind of paraphrased what Willow was there saying yesterday. What if the supervisor, what if the therapist sit there and says bad stuff about you with the kids and stuff like that, or with your visitation hearing? At this point, Willow's like, I don't care. I need to sit there and see my kids. I need to sit there and reestablish a connection. Like, it's been too long. It's not ideal, but I have to sit there and take it. And, Drew tries to, like, push a little bit, but, he kind of realized if he pushes too much, Willow is going to be like, she ain't going to wait here. She's not having that. So he plays it just cool enough. Um, it is starting to get kind of interesting, as far as who shot. Oh, Nina just not Nina. Anna just sits there and tells Justine that Nina is no longer a alibi for Willow. So I'm just going to sit there and throw that out there. But it is it's starting to get kind of interesting to sit there and see um who shot Drew. And people were sitting there saying it's Willow. Um, I don't personally think it's Michael. I mean, for all I know, I could sit there and say it could be Drew. Maybe he pays somebody to sit there and shoot him. I think he is. I think he's that desperate to sit there and get to Willow that he would actually put a bullet, two bullets, in his body to sit there and get with her. What he sees in that woman, I don't think I will ever know. But she's pretty, but she ain't worth two bullets. I'll tell you that much. I feel like that's about it. So, alright, so for a Friday episode, it did leave off on a good cliffhanger. I would just wish there wasn't so many fillers within the episode. Like even the conversation with Ron. I mean, it's nice to sit there and see the actress that played Vicky and stuff like that back in her conversation with Michael, but like ultimately it was pretty much just kind of catch people up. And like some conversations, like I said, um the one with like Michael and Curtis and Isaiah and Lucas didn't even seem like it really went anywhere. They were just like there just to pad out the episode. So I felt like it could have been a little more better, personally. I don't know why they do that, but this was a decent episode. Anyway, if I missed anything, which I'm pretty sure I did, I'll be sitting there talking about it tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, as well as the other 5 soap operas. You know what they are. So if you're coming in, you want to talk about Bold, Beyond the Gates, Young and the Restless, Days of Our Lives, and obviously this. I'll be doing a live stream tonight. And also become a member. I haven't really been sitting there like promoting that lately. Um, they've been actually pretty fun. We've been sitting there watching a lot of old school classic soap operas, stuff from like Passions and old school Days of Our Lives, and of course old school GH. Looking at different characters that I haven't seen since high school, and even some characters that I've never seen before that have just been pretty interesting. Um, in our reaction videos around like 9 o'clock or whatever. So if you're not a member, make sure you join. They are actually a lot of fun. Because when I'm watching the clips, I don't actually watch it before I set the stuff up. So like, I'm watching this stuff for the first time with people who either have seen them or haven't seen them. So it's been pretty fun. Anyway, I'll see y'all tonight.